more working together. So the agenda of today's meeting will be, first of all, discussing why integrate in the first place. We'll talk about the system landscape, the different combination of systems that are part of successful project initiation and execution. We'll talk about demonstration, and then we'll demo the interface between the two systems. And then we'll go a little more into the companies themselves so that you can understand who is HMS software and who is $. And then, as Tasha mentioned at the beginning, we'll have gathered your questions from throughout and any questions at the end and have a Q&A session there at the end. So when it comes down to it, when companies are implementing project-driven systems, there are a number of business issues for them to address. First of all, a key issue when it comes to systems is being able to leverage project visibility to better understand what is going on with your projects. So whether it's at the beginning of a project or in an active project, it's very important for project controls, project managers, project estimators, when that estimate is part of the project execution, to be aware of what is going on in the field with the projects. So project visibility is a key business issue for project-driven companies. When it comes down to it, with a project-driven enterprise, it's all about having the right tool for the right job. There are different systems out there. Some of them have more of a footprint within the project enterprise. But when it comes down to it, integration between systems can make it possible to have the right tool for the right job. And what that leads to is the performance that a project-driven enterprise needs in order to more effectively control their projects and lead that project to successful completion. So as I was mentioning, and what the whole topic is here, is a key barrier to those goals or addressing those business issues are that disconnected data and processes can create inconsistency and errors. When it comes down to it, a key thing that $. is focused on is making sure that the $. solutions are fully integrated with other systems that are part of the project-driven ecosystem. The way that works is through integration, through tight bidirectional integration with different types of systems. And what that enables is that whether you're at the initial phases of a project, where you're just at the takeoff and estimate phases, all the way through to the accounting phases the accounting function as the project is in full execution mode. Having a unified system that brings together these different systems provides a way for owners, EPCMs, and contractors to all communicate in a unified, consistent way. That's a key part of what $. brings to the table. And so when it comes down to it, and that kind of sets the stage here, is we have worked closely with Chris at HMS Software to offer integration between the $. solutions and the TimeControl Enterprise timesheet. And that's a key part of what $. is about. And I'm happy to then introduce here Chris, who will talk to you about the TimeControl solution. Chris?
Well, John, thanks very much, and thanks very much for having me on today. And for those of you on the webinar, thanks for spending a few minutes with us today to talk about field data collection. I'm the president of HMS Software, and what we're going to be talking about over the next few minutes and showing you over the next few minutes are alternatives for how you can get your field data collection of your, not just your timesheets and your crew labor, but also your material consumption, your equipment usage, and even your production accomplished from the field back into your project control systems, and in particular hard dollar. We'll show you the link today actually working between HD PCM and TimeControl Industrial. Here's the reason we got into the field data collection business in the first place. TimeControl is a long-standing timesheet, has been available on the market since the early 1990s. And a few years after we got started, we realized that there was a demand for collecting time, not just from back office personnel who sit at a desk, but from people who work in the field. As we'll tell you a little bit later, some of our experience in heavy industry had some of our users say a lot of our employees don't have a computer, don't even work in the office, and yet the cost of their labor has to be invoiced. It has to be collected for payroll purposes. We have a lot of information that has to get back to our project control system. Now, we know there's already an ability to enter that information directly into hard dollar, but we saw that there were requirements that fit very well in with the kind of work we were doing already with TimeControl. Things like extensive approvals. If you needed to do multiple levels of approval, or approvals in a matrix format where we approve from one perspective for the whole timesheet, but from a very different perspective before we do billing or before we update the project system. If we needed multiple rates, like rates for payroll from one perspective, rates for billing from another perspective, and also the ability to have rates all the way down to the person level. This person is going to be paid this, I'm going to have the same billing rate for each of those people. How do we deal with that when the rates become more complex? TimeControl is a web-based system, and so security is something that is woven deep into the architecture of the product. What if I need to keep some data elements secure? I don't want to show the costs, for example, or I don't want to show certain elements of data to certain users, and I do want to show them to others. And what if I need to link not just to hard dollar, but also to other systems? What if I needed to link to both hard dollar's HD PCM for cost management, and yet to a scheduling system like Primavera's P6, or to payroll, or to billing in the ERP system? How do we maintain all of those links at the same time? These were things that we were already doing with TimeControl, and we knew that we could do when we brought that to field data collection. Now, if we think about the labor side of that conversation, just collecting timesheets, one of the things that we were very familiar with here for many years is that when I say timesheet, you may mean something different. From some people's perspective, they would say, well, a timesheet is for time and attendance, so I can pay people. If someone got a vacation day or a sick day, or they worked a certain number of hours per day, then I need to pay them. If they worked more hours per day or per week, I need to pay them perhaps time and a half, or double time, or perhaps I had hazard pay, or an environmental bonus, or things like that for attendance. If I was someone else in the organization, I might say, yes, I need to collect timesheets, but from a very different perspective, I need to collect them so I can invoice the client. I need to be able to collect that data and have my billing rate per project or per work or per role associated to what we're doing so I can get my invoices out properly. If I am in the project management business, where I started many years ago in the early 1980s, then I'm interested in how are the actuals tracking against my original estimate and against my original schedule. Are we on plan? Are we ahead of plan? Are we behind? Are we under our estimate? Are we over our estimate? All of that is of great interest. And finally, if I have to go collect that from the field with a very high volume of data, how am I going to get all that data into the system easily and be able to verify it and make sure that the data is going to be accurate when I send it back to the systems to which I'm integrated? So that was the basic philosophy of what we would do with TimeControl. Now, we have had a relationship with hard dollar for a number of years, but predating that, all the way back to the late 1990s, we had a relationship with Primavera, and just before that, another with Microsoft for Microsoft projects. So we've had a link with Primavera's P6 for a very long time. We realized several years ago, as we began the design for the link between TimeControl Industrial and hard dollar, that we were going to have to deal with the link that already exists between hard dollar and P6. So how would we get that link, that HD to P6 link, woven into the work that we wanted to do? And we've been able to create an architecture whereby we can update the appropriate information in HD, and we can update the appropriate information in P6, and we can still have that link going between all three systems at the same time, which makes for a very sophisticated project control environment. We're not going to show anything with P6 today, but good enough to know that it's there. Okay, I have 400 more slides. No, I'm just kidding. Let's get off of the slides, and I'm going to instead get into the product itself and show you a little bit of HD working with the time control, so that you can see the link, and then we'll talk a little bit about where that data comes from and how you can use that. So I am in an image now of time control, and we'll get started in the hard dollar HD PCM system. In fact, I'm going to open up a form in the system for update. In fact, let's just open up a project first to look at the infamous training job, which I know many of you are familiar with. And I'm going to go straight to job tracking because I want to show something before we get started, one of those nothing up my sleeve moments. So I'm just going to scroll down here to a particular item in our cost breakdown structure. I'm going to look at a particular item, item 17.1. Now, 17.1 isn't any better or worse than any other task, except that I know what resources are required in that task. And in fact, if I open up the form to be able to show, before we show the tracking, if I just open up the CBS and go down to 17.1, we should be able to see fairly quickly what is going to be required in that estimate. What were we expecting in that estimate? Well, we can see that we needed, here I'm just opening 17.1, site preparation. We can see that we needed a laborer, an LL2, an operator class 1, a grader, a water truck, a teamster. So we had several requirements here, all of which were costed out and estimated in order to come up to the price that we originally had in that task. I'm going to look now back at the tracking for 17.1, and I've moved my columns around a little bit so the expended man hours to date can be seen. In fact, you can see that I've used this particular cost item numerous times for demonstrations because we're already at 674 hours. Well, someone just scribbled down 674 somewhere. With a little bit of luck, when we come back to this, the number will be a little bit higher. So that's 17.1 site preparation, which is going to use several different people. I'm just going to close down HD for now. And just remember that 674 on 17.1, and we'll come back to that shortly. I'm going to look into time control here for a moment and just give you a feel for the look of the system. And then we're actually going to go into the system and enter as a data entry person and enter in a crew timesheet to see how that works. I'm logging in as Joe Gardner. Joe is an administrator. And one of the very first things you can see in the login is that one of time control's options is the ability to have a delegate go into the system as yourself. This is a function that allows us to deal with someone being absent, to be away from their desk, and yet to have things that have to be approved today without compromising our security. I'm going to log in as Joe, and when I do, I am going to be presented with a dashboard. The dashboard you'll see as I log in as different people will be different. You can change the dashboard by role, by person, really to any degree that you wish. In this case, Joe has desire of billable versus non-billable time. Looks like he's not getting enough billable time in, and that the auto project is really blowing out the budget in terms of his perspective on the system. In this view, you can see that we have the complete list of menu items. Well, that's because Joe is an administrator. In a few moments, I'm going to log in as Diana Jacobs. You'll see that she has many fewer choices than Joseph has. One of the reasons I wanted to go in here is I wanted to start our journey by moving data from hard dollar into time control. I want to be able to update time control with our resources, with the resources that are associated to particular charges, to cost items, and to be able to update TimeControl's information from hard dollar. And I'm just going to say, yeah, show me everything that we have. I really want that training job in the hard dollar link. That's the very last one here on this list. To say, please update TimeControl with everything that you've got. TimeControl now reaches into hard dollar and pulls that information out in an interface that HMS and hard dollar have worked on together. And obviously I'm doing a little too much because it doesn't like it that my log is full. Whoops. There we go. Back to our screen there. Give that a moment to update. You can see that it has done an awful lot of work. I don't need to show it all to you, but it says, yes, we've brought all kinds of information in from the training job into TimeControl in terms of tasks. Well, that's great. I'll show you where all that goes in a few minutes when we come back as an administrator. But we have enough now that we can go into the system to do a crew entry timesheet. So I'm going to log into the system as Diana Jacobs. Diana is somebody who works out in the field. You can see that she has a very different looking dashboard. She has information about particular people, where they're at in their banked hours, some timesheets for herself that she hasn't been doing, because TimeControl includes both the ability to do field data collection, but also to manage timesheets for your back office personnel. Everything that was so popular about TimeControl is included in TimeControl Industrial. So we can take care of both the back office and the field data collection at the same time. Diana won't be interested in a whole lot of that. She'll probably have set TimeControl to come straight into the crew management, and she can go into adjust who's on a crew, or what we're going to do, we're going to enter a crew timesheet. Now, we're a little constrained in terms of the size of our screen, but let's just take, we're going to do a timesheet for the Carl Linden crew. We can see that Diana has the option to do entries for several different crews. You can assign security to say certain people can do the crew timesheets for certain crews and others for other crews. There can be an approval path for each of these crew timesheets. In this case, and it can even copy from a previous timesheet. But in this case, I'm going to say, no, it's the 12th of February. We would like a blank timesheet for the Carl Linden crew for today's shift work. And TimeControl then sets up everything that we need for that crew to be able to enter in our crew information. We have some key information at the top of the screen. We know the crew name. We know the timesheet number in case we have to come back here for audit purposes. We have the date that we're working on. And we have also who is creating this document, what's its status, who had it last, well, no one, who's got it now, and where would it go to next. Now, in this case, we would go to Alex Lang for approval after this. I've actually set the settings up in TimeControl to bypass Alex and an administrator, but we'll get to that in a moment. Next, we want to do some entries. Well, I can do entries in bulk very, very quickly. If I click on Insert, I can select any of the people in here and say, what project were we working on? Now, I'll do this rather slowly so we can see it. I can select from the possible projects available to me. I'll say, what training job is the one I want. I can just type in a charge code. I can just type in a 17.1. But I'm going to go down and select it. You can see we have the same hierarchy we have from the CBS. There's 17.1 underneath the training job. Underneath 17, there's site preparation, just as we expected it. I'll pick a rate code. In this case, I have something fairly simple. I have standard time, overtime, and double time. I'm going to say, well, everybody worked on this for standard time, and today's Wednesday. We worked on it for 4 hours. When I click, you can see that TimeControl goes and creates all of those lines for us for all the different people that we selected in the crew. Now, we can do a lot more here right in the system. I can, for example, on any line of this item, I can enter in a diary note. I can say bad weather. I can do the same for I can put in a note for the entire timesheet. I can see information that came out of the charge table or out of the information from hard dollar. I can even get information such as how many hours do we have per person? Well, for example, if I want to make sure that I have a full 8-hour shift, Oh, I can see that I don't have that yet. I only have 4 hours per person so far. Same thing by project. We've only entered one entry, but we could say, well, we have 44 hours on this project, and you may want to scribble that number down. Hopefully, when we go back to hard dollar, we'll have increased from 674 plus 44 hours. And the same by charge code. I can even go into expenses and have an expense item, non-labor item, associated to a person. We have clients, for example, who have field situations where if someone is working outside and surpasses a certain number of hours, then they're entitled to a pay bonus for that day, or they're entitled to a work boot bonus, or to some cash non-labor associated item that we want to get back into both hard dollar and sent out to payroll so the appropriate people get paid. So I can do all of that right from the screen. I'm just going to save that and say we're done for today because we don't need to enter any more data just to be able to make our point. We've saved our information, and the last thing I'll say here before we leave this screen is that you can see that for each line item, I know that Diana is the person who created that. For auditing purposes, if there are adjustments or changes to this data later, we will know who made that change and what time and date that change was made. So if we ever need to justify an invoice, reconcile a contractor's invoice, go back to make any kind of auditing approval of what happened here, we'll be able to see exactly who made the changes and when. Now, I mentioned earlier that I've bypassed the security, so we don't have to go through Alex and go through multiple levels of security here. I'm just going to distribute this immediately. I've set this up in TimeControl's security to say I'm allowed, with my permission, to be able to post this immediately, and it's updated all of these hours for each of these people. In the end, I can create a timesheet per person for this week or for any period of time I wish, for this month, for this day, for this shift, so that I can come back and say, great, well, now I know how many hours Kenneth Canuel has spent on our project and what we've paid him or even what we've invoiced him at. You may note that although we have the information for rate, which says we did this at standard time, yeah, I think clicked on that wrong, I think. Although we've done this at standard time, we have, well, here, let me just get that restarted. It seems to be very unhappy. I think because I filled a log up before I got started, and we'll just go back into that. So for Diana, although we had the rate code on the screen, we didn't show the values. So we can make that available in a report. We can make that available otherwise, but we don't expect that a person who is entering this information in a trailer out in the field has to be looking at the amount everyone is paid or the amount we're invoicing for each person. But now that we have done that information, and I'm going to have to just clear that event log before we get that same error again from TimeControl, the event viewer, and we're just going to clear that log out. I should have done that a little earlier. There we go. Good. And so before, now that we've distributed that information, now that everything's been posted, I'm going to send this information back to hard dollar, and then we're going to come back into TimeControl, look at some reports, and look at a number of other features. So the same way we brought information in from HD when we made that link, now we're going to send information out. You can see that I'm offering to run this now, but I could do this on a schedule. I could say do these links every hour or do them in the middle of the night. In our case, we're going to do it on demand, and we want the training job associated to hard dollar. That's this one right here. And I'm going to show you that we have quite a number of options in how we're sending this information back. But for the moment, I'm going to fire up the link between the TimeControl system. It's opening up the HD API. That's the application programming interface that allows us to use hard dollar itself to bring information in and make sure that it goes to all the appropriate places. And that when information comes in, that it either gets costed if we ask for it that way or not. We can see that a whole lot of information has gone in here now. It says done successfully. That's great. That's just what we wanted. And I'm going to minimize TimeControl. Let's go back to HD for a moment. And we'll keep our fingers crossed for our 674 number. Right back to training job. And let's take a look at the tracking and scroll down to 17.1. There we go. We were at 674, and now I can see the information is at 718. So TimeControl has updated this information, and if you look at the detail, so I'll explode down the details so we see where did it all come from. You can see that there was 4 hours expended. When I go into that information, it's going to give us the exact entry. It says this came from TimeControl. It was 4 hours, and no additional cost. We could even update tags from TimeControl back into HD if there were certain tags that were important to us to be able to update information from the timesheet all the way back. And all the way back to here, you remember the note we put in? Bad weather today. So even that has been updated from our information back into HD. So TimeControl and HD really truly linked together, where HD is able to get that really rich definition of our costs, of our estimates, and also our track costs, and TimeControl is able to collect them. Whoops, sorry, didn't mean to minimize that. Just meant to close HD. Let's go back to TimeControl now for a few moments, and I want to show you how the link got generated here, and where the information that we moved back and forth comes from. We saw information that came from a range of different tables, and all of those tables were somehow related. In fact, here I can see that that John Arson. In fact, let's go down and take start with a C, I think. There he is. Kenneth Canuel was in our team. And Kenneth's information went back to HD. And that's because Kenneth is identified here in the TimeControl employee table as being associated to resource code LL2. Now, we are associating the resource code here at the employee level, but TimeControl can even allow you to associate the resource on the timesheet. We have some people who have situations where they say, well, John is going to be a project manager in the morning, and he's going to be out with the pipe fitting crew in the afternoon. I need to bill him at one rate in the morning and update one aspect of our costs in the morning, and I have to update the same guy, but for a very different role in the afternoon. TimeControl can do that. We call it line item resources. In this case, we have a default resource. If we don't say anything, Kenneth will default to being an LL2 when he goes back to HD. Now that's the employee table. There's a whole range of things here that are associated, and one of the things that's available to us in all of our tables is the ability to add user-defined fields. Just like we can create tags in HD, we can create user-defined fields in TimeControl, and we can associate user-defined fields from certain tables to tags in HD. I'll show you where we do that in a few moments. For some of the tables, we have additional tabs. In this case, for example, we have for each of these people, they have banks of time for training, for vacation, for sick leave. And remember, while I may be looking at people who are out in the field here, I might also be looking at back office people in the same system who would not use a crew timesheet. They would just do their own timesheet. I very much wanted to show the project table before we went too far, and also the charge table. The project table, because here we define the links between our project here and our project and our systems outside. So if we take the training job project, this is a job that is, you can see it's in a hierarchy of projects here in TimeControl, and I have information here that may be associated to it. I can see that the project owner is Randy Peters. We can use that for security, and we also have user-defined fields. That's all fine. The transfer options is really for scheduling systems. I'll come back to that in a moment. The HD transfer options says how will we be linking. The hard dollar interface says where will I find this particular instance of HD. If you have an environment where you have multiple instances of HD, some projects could be associated to one, and some projects could be associated to another. You can see that inside of HD, I can click to get a list of possible projects. In my HD, I only have one. That's pulling straight out of the HD list of projects. In addition, I have a wide range of options for things that I might want to move in and out. Do I want to bring in the resources? Do I want to bring in which resource codes were assigned to which cost item? I can put in a filter option which might say, don't show me anything which is not available to cost. Don't show me certain elements that don't fit a particular date frame. In terms of exporting data, you can see that I can pick the expense type to do ad hoc, subcontractor, resource. I can even pick the cost category. I think mine has 4. So labor, undefined materials, and undefined supplies in my particular example. And then how do you want to cost this information? Do you want TimeControl to cost it? Do you want hard dollar to cost it, in which case it may add burdens to the cost? Or do you want TimeControl to send the cost plus hard dollar to add burdens? Depending on how you set up your costing for this particular project, you may decide that that would be different. And you can see it's one way for the labor, it's another way for expenses, yet another way for materials. And if I scroll a little further down, what do I want to do in terms of the cost resource, and how do I want to update production? The quantity completed also comes from a code. In this case, we've said it's a code called production, and numerous other rate changes. So we don't need to make a course out of that, but that's where that information comes from. The last place I'll go before we go back to talking about entering material and equipment is in the charge table, and I'll just scroll down to the training job, just to show you that we have the same structure in the training job that we had right in the CBS. You can see this has all come in straight from HD, and in fact, I even have information that says this was the account code, this was the phase code, the WBS code. I have information for that has come straight in, and I could have even brought in tags to go against our user-defined fields and link that together. So all of this allows a very rich connection between these systems. At the same time, while we're not showing it today, I could, in parallel, set up a link with P6. I could also set up the system to be exporting information to our payroll and into invoicing, using different costs for payroll and different costs for invoicing, so that I can get a real, true cost on one side and billable on the other. Okay, I'm going to log out for just a moment to go back to one more place, and that is to talk about entering non-labor information. We called it materials. It's probably a bad name for it. This is really the tab to enter our non-labor costs. So if we have material consumption, if we have equipment usage, if we have production values for what we accomplished today, and I think I have one with 2 or 3. Here's an example from a while back. So here you can see that I have a line entered for equipment that was used, a quantity of 14, and here it is costed it out with 2 different values. TimeControl allows us to use our rate system to be able to say, I'd like to maintain one value times the quantity to give me an internal cost, another value times the quantity to give me an external invoicing price. I can even do a third or fourth if I had maybe average project costs or those kinds of things. On this one screen, you can see that I have equipment. You can see that I have material expended. You can see that I have production values. We completed 80 kilometers or something. So all of that allows us to say what are the values there, and what are those production values. In HD, this would become the quantity completed amount for that particular charge code. And you can see, again, we have the project, the particular charge code that would be associated to getting that information back to the right place. So here we have an ability to enter crew timesheets from one side and all of our non-labor from another. In an upcoming version of TimeControl, we are making an option so that both the crew and the material entry can be done on 2 different tabs of the same entry. We had demand for that for some time, and sometime next month we'll be releasing a version that has that option as well. There are a lot of other things here that we can do, but I wanted to get out of this aspect of things and just talk about reporting and exporting data for a moment. One of the things that we really like in TimeControl is that the data is in a database, and from here you may want to look at it in a wide variety of formats. For example, I might want to take a look at a report that I can filter for a date range, or say just show me one contractor's worth. And I'll just explode that out to get this full page. TimeControl's report writer allows you to create reports that include both graphics and text in the same report. So in this case, I've got a pie chart saying how much are we spending for different projects. You can see the training job is taking up 62.77% of our time, and the number of hours that we've spent. You can see this is a 3-page report. From here, I can save this as a PDF. I can save it as Excel. I can go save it in a file to put into Word. I can even save it as a picture that I could put into PowerPoint. This is one report, but we have, there are a number in the system, and we expect you to be able to copy those and then make your own. So, here's one that has a combination of a bar chart, a histogram, and then down to the individual level. Being able to show us the high-level summary at the top and down to the individual for a certain period of time. So you can see that TimeControl's got a lot of options to get formal reports out. We also have an ability to show something in ad hoc queries in something called the drill down analyzer. The drill down analyzer allows me to take a lot of data where I can just say, show me whatever you've got, show it against a filter, or in my case, I'll say, no, just give me everything. And we can get a long list of data that isn't that interesting in as many fields as we wish to drag in here. By dragging one of these columns one spot higher, I've now got everything subdivided by project. If I then say, oh, I really meant by client, actually it should probably be by client and then by project, I can now say, explode out for the Acme Corporation. I can see I have 3 levels here for 3,000 for auto, for Polar. I can see the hours that were posted in this period against cost 1 and cost 2. And I can go all the way down to individual items to be able to identify what happened here. Again, from here, I can export that to Excel, to PDF, to be able to go do further analysis with it if I want. This feature deals with some of those ad hoc questions that timesheet people always get. Say, last month, how much time did we spend on contractor meetings that we weren't able to actually invoice? Yeah, really good question. I have no idea. And how much time will it take me to find that? I have no idea about that either. Here, that takes moments. Being able to delve deep into the data, or give me the audit trail of who approved this information. Was it approved by the client? TimeControl has something called a matrix approval process, where I can see not just approvals the way that we see the whole timesheet, but I can do approvals from one perspective for the whole timesheet, and again, line by line for the project. So project managers can also approve things before they go back to the client. There are numerous other tools in here that we can go through in more detail. But for example, the ability to do a missing timesheet report. Are there any crews for which I'm missing a timesheet today? Are there any people for whom I'm missing a timesheet per day? And finally, if I just go into my own timesheet, I can look at my. I'll take a look at somebody else's, but I can create my own weekly timesheet for back office personnel right in the system. So here I'm looking at Gail Robinson's timesheet right in the same system. So we have all personnel data all managed simultaneously in one database. All of our costs in one great place to export and to deal with for reporting and for validation. Okay, before I bore you to tears, let me go back to our slides and just talk about a couple of other things before we move on. So we saw this link in practice that started from HD, from a cost item, became an item in a crew timesheet, and went right back to a detailed tracking item in job tracking. TimeControl does that for labor, for equipment, for materials, and for production values right out of the box. Now, we showed that one link for HD, PCM, and TimeControl linked together, but there's also an ability to link to scheduling, to the ERP. So I can have one link going to HD, one link going to P6, another link going to JD Edwards, perhaps, for our payroll, another one going to JD Edwards separately for invoicing or to Oracle financials or to Dynamics or whatever you're using on your ERP finance side, keeping all of those straight where the actual amounts spent are all auditable back to the detailed record in TimeControl. We've been used in a number of different industries, including defense aerospace, where the government takes great interest in making sure that this data is all completely auditable and traceable back to whoever entered it. We talked about approvals. There's an extensive approval system in TimeControl that is worthy of really an hour by itself that you can see on the industrial.timecontrol.com website if you look for matrix approval, where we'll show you how these approvals can be done from multiple perspectives inside the same process. And in our case, we're moving information from HD into TimeControl. We're approving information in TimeControl before we send it back to HD, so that we make sure that in that system we know that this is the data we are confident of now. Perhaps both the client and the cost manager have signed off before we go and update our records back in HD. Not only do we have manual approvals, which we've been talking about, and I should have put one maybe into the example, but TimeControl includes automated validation rules. I can create business rules that say, great, you can't have more than 40 hours of standard time in 1 week. You can't have more than 8 hours of standard time in 1 day. You must have meant to put overtime in there. Or you're not allowed to work on that job. You're not even in that county. So I can put in all kinds of business rules in the system that would either give us warnings or errors and prevent us from getting bad data in before we even get started. There's no limit to the number of rules that you can put in, but we usually caution people not to start with hundreds. Better to start with a handful so that we have the system gain acceptance faster than people start complaining about what rules are in it. And depending on where the approvals are and how you've designed your approval process, we can then send information out to payroll quicker. We can then perhaps do more validation on the line items before we send the information back to HD and back to P6. That's up to you to create in terms of what your process should be. When we're talking about TimeControl, we focused on, and TimeControl Industrial, we focused on a few features that Hard Dollar asked us to look at. Things that we already had in TimeControl that Hard Dollar said these would be great things and really a good reason for us to cooperate with HMS to have an integration between the two systems. And that integration that we showed you today is the result of personnel both at Hard Dollar and at HMS working together to design, code, and test that environment. First of all, the web-based interface, working inside of Internet Explorer or working inside of other browsers. Having both a timesheet for the crew and a timesheet per person, and being able to take the crew timesheet and resolve that to an individual. Being able to get an assigned task not just to the level of resource, but all the way down to an employee if we have to. Oh, we didn't show it today, but we also have the ability to capture the time in and time out, multiple starts and stops per day. And I can do that per person. I can do that for the whole crew to say when did they start, when did they stop, so that we can associate that information. Or we can bring in information from swipe card systems that may have access to the network if we want to integrate that way. The ability to enter in our notes. You saw in the notes that we entered in the web interface, they end up back in the cost item, in the job tracking to say, yeah, bad weather on that day. Very complex rate structures so that we can do different things with rates. And being able to have the rates associated to individuals. This was something that Hard Dollar thought was important because of that, that situation where two people are paid different rates, but we're billing them and costing them at another rate or at the same rate. So we have that ability also. All of that can be transparent or invisible to the user. The business validation rules we just talked about. Extensive approvals, multiple levels of approvals, both line item and people approvals. And the ability to have a custom report writer. We saw some standard reports, but all of those came from our custom report writer that you can use in the system. We have security going down to the field level, being able to hide certain fields or show certain elements of data to some people, not to others. Constrain the way data is entered so some people see it one way, other people can enter other things, and even have an employee become inactive without having to delete them in the system, simply take them out of the running for now. And finally, TimeControl, while I've been working in Explorer today, TimeControl works in multiple browsers. We can enter in some information like our personal timesheet on a tablet or a mobile device, and be able to update things from virtually anywhere we can find the internet. You can install TimeControl at your premises, or you can subscribe to it. You can subscribe to it online. And finally, while we really didn't spend much time on it, TimeControl is both a field data collection system and a system that allows us to enter in individuals' timesheets for all the back office personnel. So I think we've talked about most of this. The crew, the different kinds of entries for material, equipment, and production, rates. It is multilingual. I'm up here in Montreal, Canada today, where we have to deal with at least 2 languages. Some people are dealing in English and Spanish. Other people in other places. TimeControl has supports a number of different languages. Multiple links, and as I mentioned, back office and field data collection. Okay, let me talk for just a moment about who we are. We've been talking about what we do, but HMS has been around since 1984. We founded the company in late 83, 84, and started off specializing in enterprise timesheet and enterprise project management systems. We have over 2,000 clients. With the different systems that we've sold, over 250,000 licenses ever sold. We are working in every continent but Antarctica. And as I was telling someone yesterday, we tried very hard to get a job in Antarctica and actually missed out because of time. We have numerous alliance partners. We obviously have a pretty tight integration with Hard Dollar. John and I have known each other, I think for almost 20 years now. We also have a very long-standing relationship with Microsoft that goes back to the mid-90s. Very long-standing relationship with Oracle, also goes back to the mid-90s, and with Deltek for their project management tool. With all of these partners, we have different relationships, but we're also an ISV partner, an independent software vendor partner with integration advantages. We have experience that goes through a wide range of industries and heavy industry experience that covers things like power, gas and oil, pipeline, defense information in aerospace, and everything from very high technology defense to very high technology defense stuff, all the way down to construction and heavy construction information. You'll see on our website a wide variety of industries. TimeControl Industrial, particularly popular in utilities, in architecture, engineering, construction, and in heavy manufacturing. But TimeControl itself used in a wide variety of industries across the board. And finally, we are represented really all over the map. We have representatives. We're in Canada as where our headquarters are, but we have representatives through the U.S., all across Europe, in Asia, and the Asia Pacific region, and the Orient. So I think you'll find Asia and Africa, South Africa, and North Africa, and the Gulf. So we're a little bit all over. And that's HMS. With that, I'll ask John to jump back in and perhaps give us just a couple of minutes about Hard Dollar, and then we can use the remaining few minutes for questions.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chris. And as Chris just showed you, I think this is a very nice example of a tight bidirectional link between the Hard Dollar system and TimeControl. You can see that it flows data from Hard Dollar estimating, or Hard Dollar solution, over into TimeControl and then feeds data back. That's what we're talking about when we talk about a tightly integrated system. So it's a nice combination. And just to give a little background here about Hard Dollar, just have a few slides here to talk about. Just a moment. Chris, can you make sure I have control there? Okay, it was just a little, all right, thank you.
A lag, I think.
Yeah, just the distance between Arizona and Montreal. So when it comes down to it, with Hard Dollar, just like with HMS, we have extensive experience helping customers across a wide range of different industries. And specifically, while we started on the estimating side, we've expanded that footprint to bring together that project execution phase, what we call project cost management. And we were a leading company in creating that category and the way of thinking about estimate and how it ties in to that project execution phase. Just like HMS, we support a wide range of different industries. You can see definitely a core within the infrastructure, but we are working with many different clients in a number of different industries that you can see on the screen here. What it comes down to is, and this is of our active user base, we currently have more than 20,000 users worldwide. With more than 500 companies using that software. And what it comes down to, from a worldwide perspective, is right now we know of active use of our software in 24 different countries around the world. Just like HMS, we are also partners with a number of different key companies. Oracle and SAP are ones that we are very closely involved with, and that we've created our own integrations with these systems via the partner programs and our development efforts in coordination with those other companies. So from a software perspective, as we've discussed previously on this webinar, the whole idea is about combining the solution. So before hard dollar, and you look at the project life cycle, there's a lot of different pieces that are part of running a project. And without something to bring all those things together, it means creating a lot of different connections. So with hard dollar as the middle, we can bring together those pieces and create a much simpler and a unified system that, as we were seeing with HMS TimeControl today, helps the project control side of it answer that question, where did we get that number, in an audible and verifiable way. So we're just waiting here for a moment. So that leaves questions. And so at this point, if you have questions, you can use the chat function within the GoToWebinar interface to ask your questions. So, okay, we're getting a question coming in. What is the typical deployment time when it comes to linking between time control and hard dollar?
Well, I guess I should field that.
Yeah,
a typical deployment for time control to get the system configured, up and running, and your core people trained is usually a couple of weeks. When we're linked to, when we're doing a link also with hard dollar, we usually add an extra week of time when we're asked to set up. Usually then for us it's about 3 weeks of effort, but that usually happens over 4 or 5 weeks of time because there's a lot of questions that people want to think about in terms of their process and what they'd like to take advantage of and how the system should integrate together.
All right, thank you for that. Another question is, how much is it?
Well, we charge time control by, we lower the price by volume, so that there's a discount by volume. And we have different prices for users versus the number of employees in the system. But for sake of argument, call it about $100 a license, $100 a person.
All right, thank you. Again, use the chat function within GoToMeeting if you have questions. I do have one more right here. It's, do you have any customers in the oil and gas sector?
Yeah, in fact, we've been very strong in oil and gas lately. Canada, of course, doing rather well in the oil and gas business. But we have people working in engineering oil and gas, people working in pipeline oil and gas, people working in refining.
Another question just came in is regarding pricing. How can we get more information right now?
Yeah, very good question. If you go to the industrial.timecontrol.com site and just click on Contact Us, then you can either give us a call or drop us, fill out a form or drop us an email, and we will get back to you specifically. What we'll need to know is the number of total resources you'll be tracking and the number of users, and we can give you a quote right away.
All right, thank you for that, Chris. Are there any other questions? All right, we just got another question. Let's see, do you have an online video webinars on the links with Primavera P6?
Yes, if you go to the industrial.timecontrol.com site, you can see something similar to what we just did with HD, but in that case, linking with P6.
All right, and another question was, you showed quickly the equipment time entry, but didn't show an individual equipment. Are we able to create individual equipment IDs linked to our ERP assets and enter time against them?
Absolutely.
All right, a good yes or no question there. Any other questions? We'll give it a moment or two, and then we'll just wrap things up here. And again, the information about obviously contacting Hard Dollar is on the screen, as well as with HMS Time Control with the industrial.timecontrol.com. And I know in going to the HMS website, there's a wealth of information there about the combination of tools and other information there. So another question is, initial setup, where is the database stored? Can it be accessed remotely?
Well, the data is stored in a database. We support Oracle, MySQL, and SQL Server. We provide the schema and the logical diagrams of that data. If you want to access the data directly through like a report writer or something else, then yes, you can access it directly.
All right. And then another question is it cloud-based or usable with tablets? Or
it is both subscriptions in the cloud. Most of the functionality is available on tablet or mobile, but the crew entry in particular at the moment is not.
All right, and then Eric, we saw your note, and we'll pass that along to Chris as well. Is there also a demo?
Control billing is an export to an invoicing system, and we didn't really talk much about exports except for the export to HD. But we'd be happy to have someone in our technical department walk through how to configure that for you.
All right. Any other questions? If not, we'll go ahead and wrap things up. Last call. But obviously you know how to reach us. All right, so thank you everyone. We'll take that as the final closing on the question and answer. We appreciate all of your time here. Chris, thank you very much for showing us this combination between the Hard Dollar solutions and an external timesheet system that we saw here today. As a reminder, you will receive a follow-up email with a video copy of today's presentation within the next 24 hours. And if you have any other questions, please feel free to visit us at either harddollar.com or, of course, industrial.timecontrol.com. And thank you again, everyone.